If you're on Windows, I recommend downloading the latest release, Blender 2.9. And on Linux, I was having some trouble installing plugins, so I went with long-term support. So since I'm on stupid Windows, I'll download the Windows 64 MSI. Once you install and open it, you'll see this. Blender is a 3D animation program, but we don't need this, so we're gonna go click this plus, video editing, video editing. Okay, we can add media by navigating here and dragging stuff in, but I prefer to press Shift A and go to movie, and I'm just gonna double click this file to import it. Now you'll notice if I try to scrub by clicking here, it lags really bad. This is the main drawback to using Blender. We can generate a low quality proxy to edit with that will be much faster. A proxy is basically just a low quality version of our video. So while we're editing, instead of decoding the original high resolution video, our computer will do a lot less work by instead showing us a low resolution proxy of the video. So click on this video strip. This is audio, this is video. If you don't see this menu, press N and it will bring it up. Go to Proxy and Cache and click on Set Selected Strip Proxies and enable 25%. Now you can click on Rebuild Proxy and Timecode Indices and it will start building the proxy. Once the proxy is built, we actually have to enable it in the viewport. So click this arrow or press N and go to the View tab and let's view the 25% proxy we generated. Now if I scrub, you can see it's really fast. The cache is also active here. I like turning that off because I feel like it has been pretty unreliable. We can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel, and we can also scroll wheel click and drag to move around. And a cool feature with Blender is you can see it keeps going without me having to lift up the mouse. We can set the ending frame range with these two buttons down here on this timeline. Now let's say I want to make a cut. I can select stuff by clicking and dragging, and I can press K to split the strips. Also, there's a difference between normal split and hold split. So let me split this clip really quickly to show you. If I press K and move this, you can see if I extend this, it still has the rest of the video. But instead, if I press Shift K to do a hold split, which is shown here, and I move this, you can see that it just extends the last frame. So this is good for if you want to extend the last frame, and it's also useful for reversing clips from the correct frame range. You can press X or the delete key to delete selected strips, and I can just select and drag these over. I don't have to be precise because it will just pop over for me like that. And let's render what we have. So if I go to the rendering tab, you'll see in this panel on the right, all of these options are related to the 3D aspects of the program. We actually want to go to output properties right here, this little printer icon. So you can choose whatever you want for these properties, but for the output, I will recommend you use FFmpeg video. Open this encoding dropdown. Some common ones are MP4 and MKV. I'm going to go with MP4. I'm going to use the H.264 video codec and choose perceptually lossless quality. Lossless is a much bigger file size than perceptually lossless, so do what you will with that. When I'm doing the final render, I'll do slowest encoding speed, but if I'm just testing out some small sequence, I'll do real time, and I'll choose AAC for the audio, and you can leave everything else as is. You can see this is going to render to /TMP. If we actually save the file, so I'll save my file in here. So I'm going to go ahead and write /render, and on Windows, I will do a \, but on Mac and Linux, you will do a normal slash like this. So I'll do that. This / indicates that we want to render relative to the blend file. So if I render this now with Control F12, I can also go up here and click Render Animation. You'll see this thing pops up, and if I go to the folder here, you can see that there is a render folder that got created, and it's named it the frame range we selected. It's that frame range. If you want to render only an image, you can just press F12 and it won't save it anywhere. If you want to save it, you can go to the render window and press Image and Save As. Now that it's done rendering, we can view it with Control F11. Okay, so that's the basic workflow. I'm going to get into hotkeys and specifics now. So first, let's customize this view and set a default startup file. In Blender, any window you create can be whatever you want it to be. So I can take this sequencer window and I can change it to a 3D viewport. And you can see I have this cube here, but I don't want that. I want the sequencer window. You can create more panels by waiting for that plus sign to appear and dragging them out. So when you see this plus, you can click and drag to collapse that window. And so this window, I don't want this to be render options. I want this instead to be the timeline because we are going to animate images and stuff. Also, I'm not using Blender for 3D stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these. I can also change the size of the timeline by pressing Control middle mouse click drag, and you can see So to save our startup file, we can go to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. And now when you open Blender, it will be exactly as you left it. Let's add the 2 plugins that will make our workflow really fast. The first one is VSE Transform Tools. Let's open this release page here. Click on VSE Transform Tools.zip. Now if we go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and press Install, we can navigate to our Downloads folder and double-click the zip file. Now if we click this drop-down that says All and we change it to Sequencer, hopefully you should see Power Sequencer and VSE Transform Tools. Enable both of those. Okay, now let's add some more media. I'm going to go press Shift A again, add an image, and I'm going to add this dog here. You can see it stretch the image to the canvas. I really don't know why it does that, but click on the image, go to Strip, and check Offset. That should make it kind of normal again. So Blender has some global hotkeys that apply to pretty much everything. If I select this strip and press G, you can see it moves it around. If I press X, it will move it only on the X-axis. And if I press Y, it will move it only on the Y-axis. And the person who made VSE Transform Tools made it do the same thing. So if I click on this strip and I press S, in the viewport I can scale him, and now I can press G to move him down. I can also press R to rotate him, and the same axis controls apply as well. Also, if I want to rotate, if I type 90, I can rotate him 90 degrees. If I want to move the dog left 20 pixels, I can go G, -20, and you can see he moved -20 pixels there. And you can see if I zoom in here, we have our original dog strip, and the transform we made created a transform strip on top of it. So if I delete that and then unhide this strip with H, you can see the dog is normal again. Let's enable offset again and scale it back down. So when the transform strip is created, it automatically hides the strip under it, and we can click the transform strip and go to the strip tab and make sure the blend mode is set to something that won't cause the background to disappear. If we click our audio here, we can check display waveform and we'll see the waveform show up. There's not much audio in this video, so you can't really see it, but I'll make it louder by changing this volume slider here. And you can see the stuff on the top channel takes precedence. So if I select my dog here and press D and Y, I can place it right here. And if I move him, you can see this one is the one on top and this one's over. If you change the blending mode, for example, if I make this alpha under, it goes under everything, but this is generally how things work. Okay, if we want to sync the audio and video in case the frame rate isn't constant, we can go to playback and select this here and choose AV sync. To reset the positioning of this image, I can right click it and press Alt S, Alt R, and Alt G. Hopefully that was clear. I can crop it with C, and you can see let me crop his face. And if I press Alt GSR again, it will go to the center as well. So you can see it's in the center here. I can snap this to an edge by pressing G and holding Control. I can do fine movements as well by holding Shift. So you can see the movements become more fine there. So let me snap this to this edge. Let's say I want this to be as big as possible while still being in the canvas. I can go here and press 2D cursor, and I can set this 2D cursor by control clicking on the canvas. And you can see it snaps to different parts of the strip. Let me do the bottom left. And now if I press S to scale, you can see it scales from the bottom left instead of the center. And if I hold Control, you can see it snaps. Also, we can do individual origins. So if I press A to select everything and S to scale it, you can see that it's scaling based off of the center of each image rather than the center of the entire selection, like that. I can cancel any operation with right click. So if I press G to move this, I can right click to cancel. The same applies to pretty much everything in Blender. It just so happens that this plugin author did a really good job of making sure those carried over to his plugin. I'm pretty sure. Let's say I have some small clip I'm sending somebody that's only part of a screen. Like I can press A to select everything, move it down, and I'll scale it in just like this. Let's say I only want to render this. I can press Shift C and VSE Transform Tools will automatically change the resolution for us. So if we go up here to resolution, we can see it changed. I'll go ahead and undo and it's back. Okay, now let's get to animating. You can animate really any value in Blender. You can see these white dots next to these input values. If I go to the beginning and click on this strip here, I can enter a keyframe for this X position and then move here, and I can change the X position and insert another keyframe, and you can see it becomes animated. And you can see that those showed up in the timeline on the same frame. But I'm actually going to press A and delete these. Blender has something much more convenient called auto keying. If I enable this right here, any movement I make in VSE transform tools will automatically insert keyframes for me. So I'll go ahead and move this, scale it, and rotate it. Let me scale it down there. And if I go to the end here, I can move it, scale it, rotate it again. And we're looking at a good dog there. So now if I play that, you can see that's just an amazing intro. I don't know who wouldn't want an intro like this. Anyways, if I now like scale it in the middle here, you can see it adds a scale keyframe right here. And hopefully that functionality is clear. Since Blender is a 3D animation tool, it also has a graph editor. So if I go to the graph editor here, I'm going to have to control middle mouse click drag because this thing is always messed up. You can see that these animations are all curves. So if I make the animation much simpler by deleting all these keyframes, and I'll reset everything, scale it a bit, put it here. And if I go to the end and move him, you can see that it starts slow and then it goes faster in the middle and then it slows down again. That's called a Bezier curve. Blender by default uses Bezier curves for animations, but if I select everything and press T, I can select linear, and if I go back to the graph editor now, it changed the animation to linear. And if I play it back, you'll see that it is linear now. Also, if you're messing around in the graph editor, you can press V to change the handle types. So you can do some pretty crazy stuff with this, and they also have this modifiers menu where you can add sine waves and everything, but I don't want any of that. I'm just gonna go ahead and choose linear. You can press Control Tab to switch between the timeline and graph editor. Another thing I want to show you is scenes. So I can go up here to choose a scene. If I click this copy icon here, I can full copy or create a new scene. I'm going to full copy. If I delete this here and I go back to my first scene, you can see the difference here. I can also copy from scene to scene. Let's say I want to copy this back. I can go here and paste it in with Control C and Control V. And I can also append scenes from other files. So if I go to File, Append, let's say I want to append something from this file, I can double click the blend file, go to Scene, double click the scene, and you can see it got imported as Scene 2. You can see this whole thing got imported here. But I don't want it, so I'm going to delete that with that X button. I'm also going to delete this second scene. Okay, I'm going to go over some other strip types and options. Let's go to the Shift A menu, and you can see a text strip. So I can add that. You can see tiny text right there. It's blurry because we're on a 25% proxy right now. If I go to the strip tab, I can type text here. Hello world. I can change the size here. I can change the color right here, and I can add a shadow. Honestly, the text doesn't work great right now in my opinion. It's okay. For simple use cases, this works fine. We also have color strips, so just one big color. These can be useful for masking something out because masking depends on blacks and whites. We also have speed control. I can select my strip here and add a speed control effect strip. And if I select this here, you can see that it should become faster. We also have another effect strip called Gaussian blur. So I can do effect strip Gaussian blur. And if we crank up this blur, one thing to keep in mind when you're using this is if you're using a 25% proxy, it will not look accurate to your render. So you might want to just pop a quick F12 to look at what it actually looks like before you render your whole project and find out that it didn't blur it well enough. So see, it's much less strong in the render. 30 might look good here, but you might want like 100. We also have kind of simplistic transitions. Blender is not really great for preset transitions or anything. So if I select two visual strips and I go Shift A, transition, gamma cross, you can see there's a little white line in there now. That's because I have to do this. If I move this out, you can see there's a little cross. So that's a little basic, but what I like is I can make my own transitions really easily. You can be as creative as you want. You don't have to go through some stupid text menu to fucking fill out a contract. You can also reverse strips. I can go down and click video here, reverse frames. You can see the frames are reversed, but it might reverse the whole clip. So what you would end up having to do is you'd have to hold cut both sides and then take your video and reverse it. There's also something called meta strips. So I can select multiple strips and press Control G. Now those strips are packed into one. I can do transitions on this now. I can click this and press Tab to go into it. You can use Control to snap stuff without having the rest of the project affect what you're looking at. You can press Control Alt G to get rid of the meta strip. And you can just look at options through here. There's opacity, you can mirror a strip, and you can look at the different options in here. If I activate this clip by clicking on it and I press A to select all strips, and I change some property here, it won't change it for all of them. But with this set selected strip proxies, this will activate the selected proxies for all applicable strips. And the reason this is relevant is, let's say I have a strip and I click set selected strip proxies and I enable 25% and 75%. When I click rebuild proxy and timecode indices, it will build both a 25 and 75% proxy. And the same applies to selecting multiple strips at once. Let's say I change opacity on this strip, but I also have like a bunch of other strips that I want to apply that to. Like, let's say I have all these strips. I don't want to go through and click opacity on all of them. So what I can do is activate the strip with the property I want, box select the rest of them, right click the opacity and click copy to selected. And you can see that all of them have the same opacity now. I can also enable safe areas by going up here and checking safe areas, and I can do something like this. Also, if things are being buggy for you, a good option is to save your file, go up to File here, open Recent, and open the same file you're in right now. So that should be a pretty solid overview of what you can do. Now I'm going to go into a bunch of different hotkeys that are going to be useful. My intent is not to make you feel like you have to know all these hotkeys right off the bat, just so you know about them. So when you're editing something and you think there must be a faster way to do this, you can remember, oh, he talked about that hotkey in the video. So with that said, A to select everything, Alt A to deselect everything. I can copy stuff with Control C. When I paste it, it will always paste at the playhead. I can cut stuff with Control X. So if I cut this and paste it, it will paste right there. I can multi-select stuff with Shift. So if I hold Shift and click on these, I can select these as well as this. And I can also Shift box select like that. I can select everything to the right of the playhead with Control click. And same with the left, Control click on the left side of the playhead. Editing my video here, I didn't realize why this was so useful. Let's say I want to insert a strip right here. I can just press Control left click, G, X, move it all to the right, and then move my clip in. If I control click a strip, you'll see it selects the related audio or video. I can press Shift Alt G to select the handles near my mouse. So Shift Alt G right there selects all the handles there. And lastly, with selection, I can press L to select a bunch of touching strips. Next is movement. So if I select something and press G, I can move it slower by holding Shift. And that applies to a lot of different things in Blender. If I move this with G and press Control, it will snap to the side that my mouse was on when I started moving it. So you can see my mouse is on the right side of this strip. So when I press Control to snap, it will snap to the right side. But if I press G now, it will snap to the left side. If I click on a strip and press Alt right, it will swap it with the right neighboring strip. Same with Alt left. If I'm moving something, I can press X or Y to move it on a specific axis. I can transform by typed amount. So if I want to move this back 45 frames, I can do that by typing G -45, enter. With my playhead in the middle of an active strip, I can press E to grab the handle on the side my mouse is on. So if I move my mouse here, you can see I grab that handle. Also, let's say I want to extend this strip, but I don't want to go ahead and move all of this over and then select these and press E. Instead, what I can do is I can select these, press E, and if I Alt click, you can see it pushed everything over. If I press C, it will concatenate the nearest strip, and I can keep doing that. I can press Shift C, and it will concatenate and remove all gaps. Also, let's say I have this configuration here. If I hit backspace, it will remove that first gap in all channels. If I press Shift backspace, it will remove all gaps in all channels. So you saw it didn't just remove the first gap there, it removed this one here as well. Another thing I can do is just select a group and press C, and it will concatenate them. If I press Shift S, it will bring the selection to my cursor, and this works with handles as well. So if I select these handles and press Shift S, it brings them to my cursor, and I can press D to duplicate strips. That's it for movement. Now for navigation, I can press numpad dot to move to my selection. So if I'm zoomed out here and I press dot, you can see it went to my selection. But since this was the active strip, it zoomed it out to there. So if I do this now, you'll see that it did it properly this time. The thing is, you might not have a numpad, so you can go to Edit Preferences and go to Input and click Emulate Numpad, but that didn't work for me for some reason with this specific hotkey, so I just edited the hotkey myself in the key map. Something else you can do is press Home, and you can see this is the beginning of the frame range, right? And this was the last strip. And if I press Home, it zoomed me to that area. If I do the frame range here, you'll see that it will zoom me to the frame range. If I move these strips here and press Home again, you'll see that that's what it does. Press Control Z to undo, and you can press Control Shift Z to redo. The up and down arrows will move to the nearest strips, and to the nearest keyframes. So if I insert a keyframe right here and I insert another one right here, you'll see pressing up went to the strip, keyframe, keyframe, strip. I can also use page up and page down to go between strips and skip the keyframes. And pressing K normally will just cut under the playhead, and selecting something and pressing Shift K will do a hold cut. If I press Alt K, it will cut to the right side of the end of the strips under my cursor. And if I undo that, and if I press Control K, it will cut and delete to the very left side of that strip. If I add Shift in there, it will also ripple. So it will cut here and delete until here. So this is Alt Shift K, and this is Control Shift K. Shift T will let me cut like this. So it will cut the whole yellow portion. And so far, this has worked pretty robustly for me. So I can do something like that and then cut this. And it's just a really fast workflow. I can press Shift X to ripple a selection. So let's say I duplicate this a few times and I want to delete these normally, but I also want to concatenate. I can press Shift X and it will concatenate for me. I can press F to fade in and out a clip. I can press Control Alt F to undo those. I can press Alt F to fade out a clip. And I can press Control F to fade in a clip. N brings up this right side menu, and T brings up this tools menu. I can press A to select everything and Alt W to toggle waveforms. And I can select some stuff and press Control Alt P to bring the frame range to my selection. And some quick miscellaneous stuff. You can copy and paste stuff without actually clicking on the input box. So as opposed to going click, Control C, and then maybe click Control V, I can just go Control C while hovering that box, go to this one and Control V while hovering. And you can also do math in input boxes. So let's say I want a 45 frame ending to my frame range. I can go here and press plus 45. Also, if we go to rendering and click this render properties button here, there is a color management dropdown. By default, this is set to sRGB. I don't fully know the implications of this. All I know is that when I set this to none and raw, my colors seem more accurate to me. And that's about everything. I will have more videos coming on my personal hotkeys and maybe my workflow in general. Also on generating proxies faster with BPS Proxy. I will also have a video on masking, but for now, hopefully you enjoy using Blender and the two amazing add-ons, the Power Sequencer and VSE Transform tools. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else I should cover. I'll also have a cheat sheet in the description on my GitHub so you can check that out. And I will also link to the VSE Transform tools GitHub and to the Blender download.